Ladies and gentlemen, it would appear that the Emperor does indeed protect, because it turns out that Sega have registered dawnofwar3.com. That's right, they've registered the domain dawnofwar3.com, which is awesome news because Dawn of War is bloody amazing. Now, why am I getting excited about this instead of approaching it with a healthy dose of cynicism? Well, because actually it makes sense for Dawn of War 3 to be something that could be released soon. I mean, let's face it, Sega own Relic, and Relic made Dawn of War 2, all the expansions, etc., and Space Marine. They are responsible for all of the best Warhammer 40,000 games in the last 11 years? Yeah, it'll be 11 years now, because Dawn of War was 2004. Relic owns Sega. Sega released Company of Heroes, I believe, sometime last year. Company of Heroes 2, whatever expansion it was. They've got to be working on something, right? And that something is quite possibly Dawn of War 3. Now, it's possible that the domain was registered so that other people can get their hands on it, but whilst that could be the case, it also does make sense for a third game to be in the works. The big question, though, if it turns out that Dawn of War 3 is in the works, is, well, what do we want to see from Dawn of War 3? Now, normally this is quite a simple question, because people will just say, well, we want more of the same. But that's not really how it works for Dawn of War, is it? Because Dawn of War and Dawn of War 2 were very different games. They were both very good games, but they were undeniably very different games. And of course, fans of the franchise fall into two distinct camps, really. There are the people who prefer Dawn of War 1 and the people who prefer Dawn of War 2. Personally, I'm a Dawn of War 2 man, but I can appreciate why people liked Dawn of War 1 as much as they did and why they might prefer it. After all, it has a lot more in the way of the traditional RTS elements to it. And of course, Relic did a good job of switching it up a bit. If you think about, I guess let's say your traditional RTS games. I don't really know if that really means anything anymore, but think about, say, StarCraft, Age of Empires, I guess Command & Conquer to some extent. And when you start the game, you've got your base, you've got your resources next to your base, you collect your resources, expand your base, build your army, off you go. Dawn of War kind of did away with that. Relic wanted to essentially take the tagline of Warhammer 40k and apply it to the game wholesale. And of course, the tagline is, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. So, you started the game and you did have some resources near your base, but you had to capture resource points, which were all over the map. To have any chance of winning, you had to get out your base sharpish and, well, go around and fight people for resources. They did a good job of representing 40k in that way, because they made it so that you had to go out and fight. You had to be involved in war. You had to be having battles all over the map all the time. That aspect of Dawn of War I really liked. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was very well done. There are little things that I didn't like. I didn't like the fact that I felt like I could produce far too many Space Marines, for instance. I didn't like the base building aspect either. I've never been that much of a, I guess, base building person, which is kind of hard to be with RTS games, since a lot of them favour that kind of mechanic, but I kind of felt it took away from the eternal war side of the game. So, you're out fighting, you're on the battlefield, you're constantly looking at units, you're constantly giving out orders, you're constantly telling, that squad to go there, that unit to go there. I didn't like having to look back at the base to build new buildings and stuff. I didn't like having to do that. And of course you can hotkey everything up, but you still have to look at the base occasionally, even if it's just to place new buildings. I felt that took away from the whole, constant fighting all the time. Obviously people preferred that though. Some people preferred that a lot. They felt the base building added an extra element to the game, which is fine. One thing I will say that Dawn of War did exceptionally well is maps. I thought all of the maps looked incredible. They really captured the feel of Warhammer 40k, more so than Dawn of War 2's maps, in my opinion. But the overall gameplay of Dawn of War 2, I much preferred. I much preferred that smaller skirmish type. I kind of imagine Dawn of War is like the apocalypse game of 40k, where people turn up with 10,000 points worth of armies and go at it for 8 hours. Whereas Dawn of War 2 felt a lot smaller. It was on a smaller scale. It was more skirmish based, more like a traditional Warhammer 40k game. For instance, next to me on the table, I've got my Space Marine army. It's a bit over 1,850 points, and there's 21 Terminators, a Dreadnought, a Land Raider. I've got some Centurions, I've got some Assault Marines, some Tactical Marines. That's like an average size for an army. There's probably about 50 models in there, and you'd expect to see that on the board of a standard game of 40k. And that's the feel that I got from Dawn of War 2, which is one of the reasons I liked it so much. You had that smaller skirmish kind of feel to it. And I have to admit, I did like the kind of faux RPG elements that were shoehorned in. I don't think they were done that well a lot of the time. I think they could have been, balanced a bit better and made to be a bit more, cohesive, but overall I liked being able to, equip my units, and I liked having like a focal point for the army, because that's something that you have in the tabletop. Again, this is something I really appreciated as someone who played the tabletop for a long time. My Space Marine army is led by a Terminator captain. He is the main character of the army, as it were. He's the hero, he's the HQ, he is the guy. And you could get that feeling in Dawn of War 2. I didn't feel like you could get it quite as much in Dawn of War, but you could definitely get it in Dawn of War 2 because the squads, the armies and the squads were so much smaller. The thing is, though, what do we want from Dawn of War 3? Given the massive disparity between Dawn of War and Dawn of War 2, the different style of play, the different attitudes that were taken towards them, what do we actually want from Dawn of War 3? Well, we'll start out with something realistic. I think realistically, we're probably going to be in for more of Dawn of War 2. We might see some different mechanics being put in. We might see some changes. We probably will see, I guess, more. I'm hoping more choice in terms of units. That would be good. I'd like to see them take cues from the Elite mod for Dawn of War 2 Retribution. Whether we will or not, I mean, I'd say it's realistic to expect some sort of crossover to that. But then again, you never know, do you? Realistically, though, I think we can expect more Dawn of War 2, because Dawn of War 2 is still massively successful, and generally speaking, games go forward, not back. I'd be surprised to see it go back to its roots for Dawn of War. Do a Dawn of War style game. Having said that, many people would appreciate that. Many people would like a return to Dawn of War 1 for Dawn of War 3. I mean, if you think about Dawn of War 1, but with far better graphics, up to date, people would go for that, and I wouldn't blame them. I would as well. But I think reasonably, Dawn of War 2. Now, if you want to be a bit more, I guess, hopeful, unrealistic, if you want to dream a little bit, I'd quite like to see a crossover between the two. I'd like to see a mix. I'd like to see the larger maps of Dawn of War, the really dark, grim kind of approach that Dawn of War took, that kind of was a little bit lacking in Dawn of War 2. I'd like to see large army sizes. To be honest, I'd like to see more of that kind of apocalypse kind of feel to it. But I want it to be balanced better. I don't want to have an army of like 100 Space Marines. I prefer to have, Space Marines be smaller in unit count, in individual unit count, but stronger. So that instead of having like a squad of 20 tactical Marines or something, you stick to the more standard 10-man tactical squad. But that 10-man tactical squad is still capable of taking on like 30 plus orcs. I'd much prefer that. That would be ideal for me. The base building side of things, as someone who isn't that fond of base building, I kind of don't want to see any in there. But if they are going to put it in there, I'd like to see them expand it a bit. Expand it on what Dawn of War did. I like the fact that in Dawn of War 2 you had the one building that had its own, like, at least mild defensive capability. I'd like to see buildings that kind of serve not a purpose for recruiting units or building tanks or whatever, but for, I guess, bonuses. I'd like to see a mix. I'd like to see, instead of you increase your base size to, allow you to build better tanks or different units, elite infantry, whatever, I'd quite like to see you unlock that in the same way that you did with Dawn of War 1, with different stages, so stage 2 and then stage 3 to unlock more stuff. But I'd like to see buildings be used for something to do with the war, The whole eternal war thing, it's a constant fight, it's constant battle, it's constant warfare all the time. Just having random buildings plopped down in your base, like a mile from anywhere, didn't sit well with me. What I'd like to see is actual base building that allowed you to, create a stronghold, so that you actually had somewhere to go. If you're being pushed back, which happens in 40k all the time, battles go back and forth. It's not the Space Marines land, Space Marines win. No, you could have a company of Space Marines land and get absolutely shafted because they've been butchered by their chaos counterparts. There's been some sort of horrendous chaos ritual, or it turns out there were 8 times as many orcs as they thought there were. They've got to be pushed back. They go back, they hunker down. They're in a stronghold. They manage to hold off the orcs until reinforcements arrive. I want to see more of that, and that could be achieved by mixing kind of the defensive element of Dawn of War 2 with the base building element of Dawn of War. Being able to put down bunkers or actual scenery from Games Workshop. There's various bits of scenery that you can buy from Games Workshop that are like the Aegis defense line, which is for anti-air. You can get like quad lasers and stuff. You know, massive towers with guns on top of them. Fortifications is what I want. That's the word. I want fortifications. I want that mix of Dawn of War 2 and 1, whereby we do the base building in 1, but we don't build a base, we build a fortress. I'd really like to see that. I don't think it's that realistic, to be honest, but you know, it's not beyond the realm of possibility. And as I say, if we could have a mix of the old and new army sizes, because the downside with scaling everything back for Dawn of War 2 was that an Orc War never felt like one. Like, it was too small. I wanted to see more Orcs, more Tyranids, but I wanted the Space Marines to stay the same. Now, I don't know how you go about balancing this. I'd imagine it'd be quite difficult, but I would like to see like more models for the Horde armies, more models for Imperial Guard, more models for Orcs, for Tyranids, fewer models for Space Marines. Obviously, something that is kind of realistic, but we'd have to see whether it worked or not, would be the addition of new units from the tabletop, because the game has changed significantly since 2011. Like, Warhammer 40k is constantly evolving in terms of model count anyway, not so much in terms of lore, and I'd like to see some of those new units in Dawn of War 3, because, you know, they are units that people use in the tabletop. They exist, they're in the lore, there's no reason not to use them. Something like Centurions, for instance, I would love to see those. I'd love to see more Dreadnought variations, like the Ironclad or the Mortis Dread. I'm mostly going off Space Marine here, just because that's the main army that I've got. Although I would like to see an expansion on what Chaos can do, like if we could have more in the way of Chaos Demons and more kind of large Chaos Demon stuff in Dawn of War 3. Again, that would be amazing. This is stuff that is not beyond the realm of possibility. This is something that could feasibly happen. You know, you expand unit count from game to game. You introduce new units, you take other units out. There's no reason why we couldn't see, you know, more of the new releases appear in Dawn of War 3. And if we did, that would be awesome. Unrealistic. Let's go all the way to unrealistic. Let's go full out fantasizing about stuff that'll never happen. If they really wanted to absolutely blow everybody's collective minds with Dawn of War 3, Relic could do something outstanding. They could do Warhammer 30,000. Now, this isn't going to happen, right? This is obviously not going to happen. This is just me thinking aloud and wondering, what if Games Workshop grew a pair and actually did something, you know, out of the box and tried something new. One time where the massive engagements that you saw in the original Dawn of War truly made sense in terms of like Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines, you know, these massive deployments that you typically wouldn't find in the tabletop very often, is during the Horus Heresy. Now, the Horus Heresy is big money for Games Workshop. It is huge money for Games Workshop. The Forge World Warhammer 30,000 armies, the Horus Heresy armies they're popular. They're also bloody expensive, which is why I don't have any, but they are very popular. The Horus Heresy novels have sold God knows how much. Dawn of War 3 set in the Horus Heresy, that would be a thing of beauty. That would be something amazing, and I don't think we'd see it. Like, I really don't think we'd see it. I would love it if we did. If we could play the scenarios for Isvan, if we could play the drop site massacre scenario as either a winning side or a losing side, that would be just incredible. As a fan of the franchise, that would be just amazing. Like, absolutely amazing. Is it going to happen? No. Realistically, it's not. It's just like that is purely the realms of fantasy. Warhammer 30,000 for Dawn of War 3 is not going to be a thing, but it would be so good if it was. So, I mean, as I say, realistically, I think we're looking at essentially a sequel to Dawn of War 2, not a sequel to Dawn of War 3. Not to the original Dawn of War, even. I think Dawn of War 3 will be more Dawn of War 2 than the original. I suggest if you really want a game that goes back to the original Dawn of War, don't get your hopes up, because I think that's kind of unlikely. That's not the way that Relic has developed their game so far, and so I don't really feel like that's going to be the way they go now. On the fringes of realism, as I say, introducing more units. If we could have a mix of the map size of Dawn of War and, you know, the playstyle of Dawn of War 2, if Space Marine squads could stay the same size, and everything else gets bigger. That would be awesome. Also, factions. I want to see Sisters of Battle in there. We never got Sisters of Battle in Retribution. I want to see Sisters of Battle in there. I want to see Chaos Demons in there. I want to see new units for all of the armies. The new stuff that Games Workshop's come out with. And in the realms of fantasy, Warhammer 30,000. Never going to happen, but you never know. The takeaway from all of this, though, is what do you want to see from Dawn of War 3? I want to know what you want to see. Are you a Dawn of War 1 person? Would you much prefer them to go back to the original Dawn of War? Are you like me? Do you prefer Dawn of War 2? Do you want to see a mix of the two? Do you want to see if they could create some sort of weird, I kind of guess, squad-based RTS, massive traditional RTS hybrid? Or do you want them to play it safe? Do you want them to just go back to what they've done before, but make it new and shiny and delightful? And if your wildest dreams could come true, would you, like me, want to see a Warhammer 30,000 game? Let me know what you think in the comments, guys. I hope you've enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time. Toodaloo!